nothing's probably more important in the preparation for college than being able to read well and write effectively. And we know that the better you read, the more you read, the better you write. That's done and dusted. We know that is true. And so students who read a lot absorb that vocabulary naturally, and their writing improves and their speaking improves. Now, the course that best supports that growth that we would hope to see, I think, is AP Language and Composition. And the reason for that is that it's a skills-based course. And so teachers and students have a lot of choice about the material they work with, and they're working with non-fiction material, and they're learning and testing themselves on skills that have to do with analysis and synthesis, looking at an argument and how someone's arguing it, or a piece of text and how a point is being made, as well as understanding it, of course. But then they're also learning how to put texts together and synthesize an argument. And ultimately, that these skills are going to serve them no matter what course they take in their future, be it a science, be it commerce or economics or social sciences. Those skills are really, really important, and they learn them by playing around with and reading texts that are very often some of them quite current, and they learn how to read with a sort of critical and analytical mind. But particularly for students who are undecided, perhaps, as they may be at the age of 16 or so, about the direction they're going to take, the fact that they understand these skills will help them no matter what when they get to college, because no matter whether they're in the sciences or in the arts, they're going to need to read critically and thoughtfully and know what's going on. So that's why I think taking that exam is of value. In fact, it's not the exam. The exam is just the end product. Taking the course is in many respects more important than the exam result at the end of it, because it's a slow process. You don't learn to read and write overnight, all of a sudden. It takes some time, and it takes some repeated attention to the skills you're trying to develop. And so ultimately the student gains an enormous amount from the course. There is an exam at the end of it, of course, but the exam is fun because it's skills-based. It's an exam that is best prepared for probably by a good night's sleep. There's nothing you need to cram or learn. Any information you need will always be on the exam itself. And so, it's a two-part exam, one in which they're reading unseen passages for a multiple choice question that tests their ability to analyze, but the answer is multiple choice. And the other section is the free response part, where they're given 3 questions that are written. One is a synthesis one, where they read several documents and on some topic or other, and then use 2 or 3 of those to create an argument of their own. They also get a second piece that is usually analytical, where they're looking at one argument and just have to answer a question about how it's been built. And then the third question is usually quite free, and they are asked to write a thoughtful, perhaps persuasive argument about some topic that is usually fairly general, so students can bring anything to it that they like. But again, because it is skills-based and not content-based, they're really ready for it by the end of the course, having had a lot of practice. Well, I think to prepare to be good users of the English language and people who can understand it well, which I think is what this course is getting at too. Young kids and younger kids than those who are going to be actually taking the course are best served by reading a lot for fun, reading for pleasure, not necessarily reading to learn, but reading just for pleasure, exposing themselves to language, listening to podcasts, depending on their age, listening to spoken English, listening and watching TED Talks if they're a bit older. That exposure, constant exposure to English wears off very, very easily. I love listening to kids who will have read something aloud, then all of a sudden as they're talking about it, I know that they're incorporating, without being told or asked, they're using some of the vocabulary from the text they've just read. And that always happens. And so the best preparation they can do is just take a chance, take a risk, give it a go, read anything, newspapers, if they're a little bit older, online magazines, it's from The Economist or Time, certainly newspapers, listen to English television programs. The news is always a good one because it's a little bit more formal, but it's not too sophisticated, and they just get used to listening. And they learn in a very natural way. So I think the best thing for younger students is simply to continue to expose themselves to, well, in this case, if they're preparing to take this course, it's a lot of non-fiction reading. Articles like the kind you find in something like Newsella that are written for children about issues that are very important to them, that really matter. Plastic Ocean, things like that, or National Geographic for kids. Those are pitched so well that, whether you're 10 or 16, I think you enjoy reading them. I enjoy reading National Geographic for kids. You're not, so they're very accessible. And what I would say is not the right approach is to start to learn lists of vocabulary or suddenly think you need to read all the classics or something, because it needs to be something you enjoy to do so it can be developed organically, I think, when you're younger. Oftentimes the written word goes ahead of you, and writing becomes very important when it's the first thing that introduces you to somebody. And I remember saying to a student I had many years ago, probably 20 years ago now in Kuala Lumpur, at the end of the English course, I used to teach them all how to write a resume and how to write a job application letter, really, but not to sit and wait for someone to say, here's an application form, but to go out and get it, and to wander around a place that they maybe find themselves living in and find the names of shops or jobs or places that they might be able to apply to get some part-time work. And I remember Danny, who wanted to become an engineer and decided to try this. And so when he got to Perth in Australia, he wrote numerous letters to motor mechanic shops and people repairing cars and things that he wanted to work on during the daytime and then study at night. And I didn't know he'd done this, but I got a letter from him telling me that he did this and he got offered something like 20 jobs as a motor mechanic. And he just said, don't ever stop telling students how to do this, because it was the words I wrote that opened up the jobs for me, not anything else. And so I do think that's important, and so often, not just like that, but in other things we do, our words, the written words, go ahead of us, and they need to be not good, but just right, appropriate to the audience or the purpose.